Adam, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so grateful to be joined by a fellow SAE from Binghamton. It's so funny. Noah Kagan is your mutual friend. My mutual friend connected us, and I go to stalk your LinkedIn, and I see, wow, this guy went to Binghamton. That's interesting. Oh, wow, he was in the same fraternity as me. That's interesting. So it's cool to have you here. It's cool to connect everything, God's plan in every moment. So thank you for joining me here today.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I think a good place to start this conversation would be you graduating Binghamton and I believe working an accounting job.
Yep.
Take me through that decision. It's a very common career path for someone to go from Binghamton to work for a Big Four or an accounting type job. And yeah, take me through that decision to do that initially, because I think that will set the stage for what you've done over the past 15 years.
Yeah, so growing up, I think my parents always encouraged me to be an accountant. It was a safe and secure job. It was about security, comfort. So I majored in accounting at Binghamton. Got a job at Ernst & Young, worked there for 2 years. Within the first week of work, I had a stomachache walking to work. It was terrible. Like, it would literally within the first week, I was like, I can't do this.
Wow.
Health and fitness has always been a passion of mine. So I always knew I wanted to do something in that. I just didn't know how it end up in it. But yeah, for starting Ernst & Young was about comfort and security.
And so you knew within the first week, all right, this is not for me. How long does it take you to listen to that intuition?
It took me 2 years.
Wow.
I was absolutely miserable throughout those 2 years, but I was plotting what I was going to do next. And I knew health and fitness was what it was going to be. I just didn't know how it was going to look.
And so, like, take me through the decision. A lot of people are right now in a position of doing something that they don't like doing. They know they shouldn't be doing. They have a gut intuition that says, I shouldn't be doing this, but they're still doing it. So, like, how do you go about making a decision for a change?
Yeah, I think you have to be, there's two ways. You can go full time and you can just give up your job. But I actually would recommend doing it on the side. Because it's hard to do your best work when you're worried about money, when you're starving, you're fearful. So I would recommend doing it on the side until you can do that enough and then eventually stop your main thing.
And you ended up not doing that, though.
Right. I quit full time. I went cold turkey. My mom thought I was absolutely nuts. But it was just something I had to do. I knew I had to do it.
Why'd you know so clearly like that was not the path for you?
Well, health and fitness has always been my passion, as I said. So growing up, my father was sick. When I was in 7th grade, I witnessed him having a heart attack. Me and my sister drove him to the hospital. Shortly after that, a few days later, he had triple bypass surgery. And then later that year, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So seeing him deteriorate mentally and physically throughout the years until he passed away was really, really hard. So for me, health and fitness is way more than just health and fitness. It was life. It was, I realized early on that, health is true wealth, that without it, nothing means anything, right? So for me, it was just a calling. My business now is my life's work. It is way more than a business. So it was just something I had to do. It was, I almost felt this pressure within where I had to just pursue it.
What's that feel like as a 7th grader and like as a high schooler? Like when did your dad pass away?
Yeah.
And like, how did that impact you?
So there's a lot of emotions. I mean, I think first and foremost, I think as a child, I remember just always being like, this sucks. I can't really play with my dad, because even when he was alive, like, he wasn't healthy. He couldn't really move around that well. So I remember feeling a little resentment about that, and just like, I wish I could play with my dad. And then there's also a part of me that's like, I feel like I'm the parent here and we're taking care of him. And he was the child in a way. So I think it was a lot of that, and it just really inspired me and made me want to never put my kids in a position, that similar position.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what lessons are you trying to instill in your children right now? And we'll get into MyBodyTutor and the building of that and how that's gone. But from a parenting perspective, what are the most impactful lessons you want your kids to know?
Well, in a way, I want my kids to take me for granted in that I'm always there. I'm always down to play. Like, my weakness is like when they say, Daddy, you want to play? Like, I will never say no to that. I never want to say, no, I'm too tired. Like, I heard that all the time as a kid, right? So whenever I will never say I'm too tired. Like, no matter what, I will always play with them. And part of the reason why I try to stay in shape is because that's so important to me. I always want to be able to play with them. I always want them to have memories of, daddy was always willing to play, always wanted to play with us.
Yeah. So going into Noah, right? Like, how do you know Noah? What's the connection there?
So I started MyBodyTutor in 2007, quit Ernst & Young. My mom, again, thought it was absolutely nuts. And I think the lesson there, though, is you really have to be willing to give up comfort and security to pursue your dream, right? And that, that was one thing that I had to get over. But started in 2007, and just, in the early days, I would just kind of reach out to people. Me and Noah both had blogs back then. And, we kind of became friendly through there. And every now and then we would talk, and I would say, hey, whenever you want help, I'm ready to, I would love to help you. Eventually, probably about 2-3 years in, maybe not even, he signed up as a client. I worked with him myself, and we became just really, really close friends through years of working together, just, on fitness and everything.
Yeah, that's super cool. But let's take it back to the first client. And what is that experience like? I think you were charging like $25 or like $75 for a 6 weeks plan. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly right. $75 for a 6-week plan.
Which probably took you, what, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 hours to compile. So like working for like nothing.
Yeah.
Why were you, and you didn't have a job at this point. So like why, and I want to go into the growth strategies and tactics that you did in the early days using Facebook accounts of different people from different places. But what about those first few clients do you remember and do you hold on to?
So I remember I had my AIM name on the website.
What was it?
GQ Gilb, just something I had my sister made for me in 5th grade.
Nice.
And it was on, that was when people, still used AIM, and I had it on the website, and I would message people all day long. And I remember just being always hey, give me a chance. If you don't see results, we'll give you your money back. That was my whole thing. It was just give me a chance. If you don't see results, we'll give you your money back. And just one by one built up a steady client roster. So much so that, I started in January of 2007. By April of 2007, I kind of had to stop taking on clients because we were so busy.
Wow. But what made your service so good, do you think?
Well, it was the daily accountability. So daily support. So we're not just giving our clients a plan. Every single day we're supporting them, we're coaching them, we're guiding them, and we're holding them accountable, right? So my belief even back then was a lack of knowledge isn't the real issue. For the most part, it's a lack of consistent action, right? For the most part, we know it's good for us. We know it's not good for us. The real issue is why can't we do it consistently? So my obsession is figuring out why that is, right? And part of that is accountability on a daily basis.
Yeah, I found that so often as well in my own life. When I tweet about something, I let people know this is what I'm doing. I have that accountability from the people who are following me on Twitter so that I'm more likely to do it. What is it about accountability that just makes us act? It's like we're not single creatures. We're all acting together. What have you found about accountability that's so impactful?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all very good at making promises to ourselves and breaking them, and we're also good at making promises to other people, but we hate breaking those, right? And when there's other people involved, there's ego involved, there's all sorts of things that are involved, and a lot of people though will break promises themselves, but when it comes to other people, they will do anything and everything to keep those promises. And I think that's one of the reasons why accountability is so important and effective.
Yeah, it's interesting. What about building MyBodyTutor in the early days? Do you look back and you say, wow, this was a pretty cool thing we did, or I think this could be impactful for somebody who's building a business or a company today?
I mean, the thing that sticks out is just the one-to-one conversations I had with potential clients, right? It was just instant messaging. I remember one of my first clients, his name was Simi. It was for hours we were going back and forth. And she's like, I don't know if this is a scam. How do I know? And I'm like, I promise you, just trust me. Give me a try. And it was just that was it. It was just give me a chance. And it was just me trying to, persuade people to give us a chance, and it was risk-free. So it's if you didn't see results, then, we give you your money back. And to this day, we still offer our money back, just because I really believe if you promise if you really believe in what you offer and we make a promise, if it doesn't work, we'll give you your money back.
And this was at a time, 2007, when nobody had really done online coaching. Today, you go on Instagram, you see hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people offering some sort of online coaching, and it's pretty well known and established what that means. But in 2007, you're convincing someone who doesn't even know what it is to do it. So how have you seen that progress over the last 15 years.
Yeah, it's wild. There was no such thing. No one was offering accountability for anything. So most people back then, it was courses were really huge.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were selling information. And I didn't believe information was the real issue. Of course, we tell our clients what to do, what not to do, et cetera. But I always felt it was, again, the lack of implementation. So back then it was more courses. It was not accountability. And then slowly but surely, you would hear like, hey, actually no one's actually following through on these courses. They're not finishing the courses. Like they're just purchasing these things that are, $1,000 or $2,000. No action is being taken. No change is being made. And it's like, well, what's the solution? And then people realize accountability is the solution. Knowledge is what will add on to the accountability. So that was back then, so I think there was no one offering accountability back then. But throughout the years, people have caught on. They realize accountability is effective. So there's definitely more of it.
What were some of the inspirations for one starting the blog in the early days? Because you could have done a YouTube channel. You could have, maybe Twitter was just starting out, but like choosing a blog. Why did you start a blog back in the day? And who were some of your inspirations at that time who were other bloggers? Maybe Noah was one of them, but break that down for me.
Yeah, so I just always enjoyed writing. My mom's a former high school English teacher, so she pushed me in my writing. So I just enjoyed sharing my thoughts. I had a lot of original ideas that I wanted to share. So I just thought a blog was the best medium for that. People who inspired me, Noah, we kind of met each other because we both had a blog, but I would say my biggest inspiration back then was probably Seth Godin.
Nice.
So Seth, I actually have been fortunate to meet him a number of times. And I just felt like what he was doing, he was sharing his thoughts, and you could just see like how you start to develop a relationship with this person that you didn't even meet, and you feel like you know them. And it was just really powerful. And then eventually I did meet him a bunch of times, but.
Yeah. What were some of the lessons you took from Seth Godin back in the days?
The biggest lesson I took was write how you speak, because I would always try to like write so perfectly in this like perfect, sentence structure and this and that. And it's like, then you just never do it. So it's just like write how you speak, be you, and that worked well, thankfully.
Yeah. I remember, I think, talking to you on the phone and you saying how you didn't really want to get on social media for a long time. And you recently kind of flipped your perspective on that. Take me through that decision to realize or to want to put yourself out there with social media and why you didn't for so long.
Yeah, I've a very love-hate relationship with social media. We built, a beautiful, substantial business without social media, but it's just throughout these years, you see all these charlatans that are just sharing this information. Like, what are you sharing? This is not correct. This is not helpful. This is not accurate. And it's just like a lot of people, the first place they go to now is social media versus Google, right? So it's like, oh, what's their social media presence? And it's like, if you don't have much of a presence, people don't think you're in business or they don't think you're doing well. And there was always a part of me that's like, I never wanted to be one of those guys that's like constantly showing myself with my shirt off or like, just like, and I realized I don't have to do that. I can do me. I can do it how I want to do it. And it ultimately, the thing that switched for me is like, I want MBT to realize its full potential, and not realizing its full potential is my biggest fear. And I just realized social media is one of those tools that we have to, explore and go all in on.
When I listened to a podcast, you and Noah talking about your journey, he described you as a very disciplined and consistent person. When you start with social media, that's breaking up some of the discipline and consistency in other areas of your life. What have you seen that you've sacrificed as a result of being online and being on social media?
I think it's just, I don't know if I'm sacrificing. It's more just, a mindset shift for me. It's just like, hey, we need to be out there. This is going to help us, just building it, making the time for it, right? And then eventually outsourcing that. Like, I write the content, someone posts it and things like that. Because a fear of mine was like, I don't want to spend all day long just posting stuff. Like that's just, so we, in the last, 5 months, whatever, we hired someone who does that. And that takes it away from me, because I don't want to be on social media all day long.
Yeah. And when you think about like who inspires you on social media, who is doing social media right from your perspective, where you could say, all right, like that person's got an audience that I respect and appreciate, and I would like to have one of those too.
I always loved how Noah did social media. I just think he's, very relatable, super smart. He doesn't pretend he's someone he's not. So I think I would say Noah, I always loved how he did it. Other than that, like I wasn't following too many people on social media. So yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. And you're looking at MyBodyTutor now, 15 years in business. When you think about the early days and you think about now, how different is the business 15 years later than you expected it to be?
I mean, it's a dream of my business. It's the business of my dreams.
Yeah.
I always hoped and thought it would be, like this. People thought it was never possible.
Who were some of the people who?
So in the early days, it's like, hey, here's my plan. I want to help people stay consistent, right? That's the real issue. And I want to do that through daily support, daily coaching, daily guidance, and accountability. And I just want to offer one, core offering, which we always have. And just build a team of world-class coaches to service those people that need our service and want our service. So back then it was just me doing the coaching, and then slowly but surely we built up a team. We have over 75 coaches now. We have a team, a full-time, executive team, and it's incredible. And we're all very much aligned in what we're trying to do. We know exactly what we are as a company, what we're not. So it's just, it's a lot more management. It's a lot more, I'm doing less coaching, but it's in a way I'm coaching coaches and coaching other people, which is still, of course, really fun. So it's different, yeah.
How does one need to change as a business progresses and the things that you're doing that excite you when you started aren't the things that you end up doing later on as a manager of sorts?
Yeah, so I call that like the restaurant, the famous, restaurateur problem. It's like, someone who is a chef, they're really, really good. And eventually, if they might get their own TV show, or they might, they're a judge on a show. And then suddenly they're no longer cooking. Yeah. And all they like doing is cooking, right? So I make sure I love being a coach. Like, first and foremost, I love coaching. So I always make sure I have a small roster of clients.
How many?
Like 5 to 10.
Gotcha.
I love coaching. I love being, my hands in the weeds, so to speak. And, I don't want to lose that. So I make sure I'm always coaching clients.
Yeah, that's a really smart way to do it. When you think about, where you see this going, is it to have 750 coaches? Is it just to like have MyBodyTutor gyms? Like, where is the vision for all of this?
So first off, we've never had a revenue goal. It's always for us is just world-class coaches, right? So for us, we want, a certain amount of world-class coaches, and we want to just keep serving people the way we are, because I truly believe what people need is coaching. Like, I just think consistency is the issue, right? It's not a magic bottle. It's not a magic pill or special food, or some whatever diet that we haven't heard of, right? It's just about being consistent. It's about behavior modification. And I truly believe that what we offer is the best way to do that. So it's just about doing more of what we're doing, and just scaling it up.
Who's your favorite coach of all time?
So I would say probably Gregg Poppovich of the Spurs.
Yeah.
Just because, yes, he's had some incredible Hall of Fame players, but what I love about Poppovich over, say, Phil Jackson, I'm a huge basketball fan, love the NBA. Poppovich has a system, and he fits the system to fit the players. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think, the argument against Phil Jackson is he coached, arguably the greatest player of all time, right? And then he coached Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. And it's like, has he won without, the best players? Those are some of the top 10 players of all time. Tim Duncan might be in there, but other than that, like, he's won championships without top 10 players, right? And he builds a system for the players, whereas I think Phil Jackson's, here's my system, but it only works if you're, one of the best players ever.
Yeah.
He tried to implement that system with the Knicks, and that did not go well. And as a Knicks fan, that was horrible.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I never thought about the two coaches from that perspective. So, okay, you have a client roster of 5 to 10 people, always just keeping your coaching skills on point. What are some of the most common problems people face when they come to you?
Yeah, and I think this will be applicable to any facet in life. So, number one is self-sabotage. I think self-sabotage is absolutely fascinating. And ultimately what self-sabotage is, I've learned, is it's the fear of what you say you want, right? So you claim you want something, right? But there's a part of you that's fearful of it, right? So let's say we'll take a small business owner, right? A small business owner, they want to grow, they want to serve more people, they want to help people, right? But on another level, almost every small business owner thinks they have the weight of the world on their shoulders, right? They have very little free time. They think if they get busier, they're going to have even less free time, right? So they can take all the, they can buy all the courses, all the books, listen to the podcast, hire the best coaches. But on some level, they feel like if they grow, they're going to have less free time, right? So ultimately, they feel like if they get to where they want to be or where they claim they want to be, their life is going to be worse off, not better off, right? So when it comes back to weight loss, there's people who use being overweight as a security blanket, right? Because a lot of people, it's like, well, when I lose weight, then I'll have to, start dating or do this or quit my job or pursue this path or whatever it is. And they use the weight as a security blanket. So if they were to lose the weight, they wouldn't have that security blanket anymore. So when it comes to pursuing your dream, whatever it is, if it's business or pot, whatever it is, like you have to believe your life is going to be better off, not worse off when you reach your goal.
So you said self-sabotage is one.
Yes.
What are some of the other problems that people, and I love how you said self-sabotage, because self-sabotage is encompassing of so many different problems that people have, and it's the core at so many times people can say, oh, like I actually don't want to lose weight for this reason, or I'm scared of this, and they're eating wrong. But at the core of that is the self-sabotage. So like self-sabotage is one thing. What are other ways people go about the problems that they have?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are just like, I call them like tactic chasers. They're just like obsessed with the latest and greatest, and they're avoiding the tried and true. So it's like, hey, what about, it's like one client's like, hey, I heard about, paleo and intermittent fasting with keto. Can we put that all together? It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. Let's actually focus on changing your behaviors, changing your relationship with food, changing your mindset, psychology, and habits, because so much of success, whether it's fitness, business, or anything, is, what's going on between our ears, right? And so, it's helping them go from, the people like I've tried everything under the sun to, hey, let's pick one thing and stick with it.
When in your life have you felt like you were sabotaging yourself the most?
So I think early on, actually, there was part of me that was, there was part of me that was scared of the growth of the business because I felt really overworked. And I'm like, well, what happens if we, if so many clients like sign up, how do we handle it? Right. So until I had the systems in place, until I had the people in place, there was a part of me that was holding back. I kind of was like holding the brakes a little bit.
You think on social media too, like that perspective?
The social media, we can go down a whole rabbit hole. That, I mean, that was also just like, it just bothers me. Again, there's so many charlatans out there, so much misinformation shared.
But wouldn't one person's perspective be that when they see that initially to be like, all right, like I'm going to say the right information immediately. And another person might be like, I don't want to be involved with that at all.
Right.
But, one person could have looked at that and been like, taking the opposite perspective.
Totally. But yes, I mean, to your original question, I mean, it's just like, I think until I knew and I felt confident, 100% confident in our systems and our people, then there was a part of me that was always kind of holding the brakes a little bit.
How do you go about creating the systems for your business?
So one of my weird goals is like, most of the people that work on MET have actually been clients. And I just love that because it's like they believe in what we offer so much that they open up their wallets, are paying for it, and they just understand the transformative power of what we offer. So like our entire E-team were clients.
You said E-team?
Our executive team.
Gotcha.
Besides our head coach, Haley. So we have John. John was a client. Jeremy was a client. Like they're incredible. Haley's our head coach. So like 2 out of the 4, and then we have Lori. 2 out of the 5 of us, John and Jeremy were clients. So they believe in what we do so much, and they believe in the mission. So for me, I was always patient because I really do believe patience plus consistency is an unbeatable combination. And I was willing to be patient because I know that the right hires matter so much, and the wrong hires can derail you so, even worse. So it took time, but like John, I remember he was a client. He was a software engineer, and I'm like, we got to talking, and then slowly but surely he started helping me, and next thing you know, he was a full-time employee for us.
How do those meetings go down to turn someone from a paying customer to now someone who's going to be a coach? What is that transition like?
So paying customer to coach, we have a few of our coaches were clients, but John and Jeremy are not coaches. They're like, John's in tech, Jeremy's in marketing.
Gotcha.
But for that, it's more like I can sense their passion, and they can obviously sense mine. So it's just this like back and forth of like fireworks, right? Just like, how you felt like, it's just like you feel that, and it's like, hey, how do we do more of this? And that's really how it started.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I was just talking to Sid from Circle, and he was saying the same exact thing of like the way that he knew he was in the right place was the conversations that he was having were so exciting to him that he just needed to be in that room more. So like for you, what are examples of like you talking to some people and being like, oh my God, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be in this moment?
Yeah, I mean, so like every Monday we have a meeting with our executive team, and it's just like every meeting almost is about like, how do we improve the client experience? How do we get closer to where we want to be? And it's like by the end of the meeting, it's like I feel like just high, right? I'm just like so like.
Why? What's going on there?
It's just like, how do we improve the product? How do we improve the service? How do we do more of what we want to do? And it's just, I mean, to me, it's just like I'm so committed to what we're doing. So it's just like I have this vision, this mission that I want to pursue. And it's like, if we're talking about that, that just lights me up.
Do you have that in like a clear, concise, like what is that vision or mission?
Of MBT?
Yeah.
So it's, 100 world-class coaches. That's what it is right now. I want 100 world-class coaches. There's no revenue. There's no talk about revenue. There's no talk about cost. I want 100 world-class coaches, and then everything else we want to do will take care of itself.
Aren't you at 75 right now? Doesn't sound too far away. It feels like you could do that very quickly, no?
Yes, but it's also, our bar for coaches is very high.
Gotcha.
It's not easy to find, 25 world-class coaches, and we're working on that every day.
What makes a world-class coach for MBT?
So someone who's extremely dedicated, extremely reliable, someone who is intuitive, someone who understands people, someone who is incredibly consistent themselves, someone who understands how to help someone get out of their own way, right? So it has to be so much more than just like the nuts and bolts of nutrition. Like, here's what to eat, here's what not to eat. Like, that's what most people do, right? And that's also what Google does. But it also has to be, hey, how do we help someone change their MPH, as we like to say? M for mindset, P for psychology, and H for habits. Because that's where the secret sauce is.
What were those three again?
M for mindset.
M for mindset.
P for psychology.
Psychology.
And H for habits.
Okay.
MPH.
Mindset, psychology, habits.
Right.
I'm sure there was a lot of work to get into those three words right there.
Yeah.
So let's break those down. What is mindset all about?
So mindset is like, are you the type of person that, the second you have or the moment you don't lose weight, are you bailing? Or are you the type of person that's like, all right, well, let's evaluate what's going on. Let's turn up the effort dial. Let's not turn it down, and let's find a new path and keep going, right? That's an example of mindset. Or mindset is like, am I going from one diet to the next, and never sticking with anything, versus I'm going to commit once and for all to this, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, right? Those are examples of mindsets, like different types of, mindsets. Psychology is more like, let's talk about fear of failure, fear of success, which is more surprising. You wouldn't think that is it's a lot more common than you would think, right? So fear of failure, fear of success, all or nothing thinking, self-sabotage. Those are the types of things when it comes to psychology that we address with our clients. And then habits is like, hey, every day, ideally you brush your teeth. That's a habit, right? How do we develop other habits? How do we cultivate other habits? Whether it's, going for a walk or getting some movement in, or, having some fruit, whatever it might be. Those are the types of habits. Like those are examples of habits.
Yeah, I like that. Mindset, psychology, habits. I'm going to use that. How have you used that framework to help yourself in other areas of your life and not just fitness?
So like, I believe any worthwhile journey in life is going to have what I call, I love these acronyms. I'm always, so
the acronym king over here, Adam Gilbert.
Any worthwhile journey in life is going to have what I call FDR, right? Fear, discomfort, doubt, and resistance, right? So FDR, fear, discomfort, doubt, and resistance. Any worthwhile journey is going to have that. And when we're embarking on something new for MBT or whatever it might be, like I feel the resistance within me, right? And I think being aware of that is so helpful. And one of my kind of core, philosophies is like turn towards it, right? Most people, they feel that resistance, they kind of run away from it, they recoil, they hide from it. When I feel that resistance, I know something good is percolating. I know I should go into it. So that's an example where it's like I'm very well aware of my psychology. And if I feel it, if I feel that resistance, and you feel it, sometimes it's mental, sometimes it's a physical thing, I go towards it, I turn towards it.
You sound like Superman. Give us an example of you failing to do that.
Well, like failing to do it would be like there was an initiative we were trying to take an MBT, and I was just not. I didn't believe in it. I was very resistant to it. It was some sort of referral thing we were trying to do, and I'm just like, I don't think this is gonna work. And like, that's more of an example. Just I guess I didn't believe in it. But I guess which leads me to like I talk about hope a lot, and hope is obviously really powerful. And I think there's also a formula for hope. And here's another acronym for you.
Let's go.
CPA, right? So C is a clear and defined outcome, right? P for a pathway to reach that outcome. And A is actually believing you can follow the path, right? And what we do for our clients is we help them develop their objective or their outcome. We develop a path for them, and then most importantly, we make sure they believe they can follow it, right? So if you're to those people listening or watching, like when you're on your journey, if you don't feel hopeful with what you're doing, and ultimately that means, do you feel like you can stick with this? Do you feel like this is realistic? Do you feel like this is going to get you closer where you want to be? And you find yourself starting and stopping, I would encourage you to make sure you feel hopeful, right? Again, have a clear and defined outcome, have a pathway to reach that goal, and make sure you believe you can follow the pathway.
How do you maintain hope when you've achieved some of the things that you set out to do initially? For example, like it's very easy for an NBA player to feel hopeful when they're on a winning team and they're excited and then they win the championship, right? And how do they then feel hopeful to do it again? And I guess not to get complacent. So for you, it's like, how do you feel hopeful? I'm sure at one point you said, I just want to have 10 coaches or I just want to have 5.
Yeah.
And then you've done that. Now you have 75. So it's like, how do you maintain hope after you've achieved something?
Yeah, I mean, the complacency thing is something I think a lot about, because I do think, I think the very thing that makes us want to achieve things can also make us not appreciate where we are. And that's a constant battle, because success without fulfillment, success without appreciation is misery. And I think most of us are always looking at the mountain in front of us versus where we came from. And it's something I actively work on. But it's also, to me, it's a mission, right? To me, when you're on a mission to serve people, to build this thing with coaches, et cetera, then it's easy to keep going. I think, to your point about the NBA player, if your goal is to make the NBA or win a championship, then I think you might lose some of that steam, right? But if your goal is I want to be one of the best players ever, I want to win multiple rings, then I think you're like, well, we're just getting started.
For you, you said you actively work on that. What are some of the ways you work on that and make sure that's a part of your daily thought patterns or your weekly reviews? Like, how do you go about building that in?
Yeah, so one of the things is I just share milestones with my wife, and I know this might sound ridiculous, but it's just sometimes just you don't even talk. It's like, oh great, we hit this. All right, what's next? Right. So even just actively sharing it, right? Sharing with close friends, talking about it, that is important. Just recognizing it, right? We'll go out to dinner. Hey, we hit this. We did this. To me, that's important, because oh, you remember we went to dinner for this X, Y, or Z. Yeah. I journal a lot. I just write down hey, how does it feel? But again, it's definitely an active, something I'm actively working on. Yeah. It's tricky. It's definitely tricky.
So how old are you?
I'm 39, turning 40 in February.
Wow. Okay. So you're 39 years old. A lot of people who listen to this podcast are anywhere from 15 to 35. So what are some of the common mistakes you saw, not only yourself, but also your peers make in their 20s?
Yeah. So one of the mistakes I made at first, because I always knew I wanted to own my own thing. I always knew I wanted to do my own thing. I felt like unless I could start the next Google or the next Facebook or whatever it wasn't worth starting. So, and for years I was just paralyzed. This isn't big enough. This isn't going to be big enough. Because I wanted to make an impact. I truly wanted to make an impact. I come from a family of teachers. My mom was a teacher. My aunt, all these people were teachers. And that was really important to me. And until I finally said, you know what? Small is the new big. And instead of going big, go small. Go as small as you possibly can and just do what you love. That's when, it was kind of the doors blew open and I was like, oh, yes, that's the idea. So to all those people out there, I'd say go small, right? And just focus on doing what you love. We've all heard it, but if you do what you love, that is the real reward. That's the real reward. I mean, I remember when I was at Ernst & Young, I was miserable. I talked about the stomach. I had a stomach every day. Doing what I love is the reward.
How do you find what you love?
So I guess from an early age, I was lucky in that I was exposed to sickness, and I try to look at it that way. I knew what I didn't want for my life, and I just became very passionate about health and fitness. How do you find? I think it's what lights you up, what you gravitate towards when, on your free time. But that said, I love reading about the NBA in my free time too. I don't think I can necessarily get paid for that, right? So I think it has to meet, what you like doing has to meet with an opportunity, as well. It can't just be what you're passionate about.
You don't think you could have made it as a NBA reporter or as a coach or an assistant coach? And why was that not something that you thought about, even though it's something you love?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. It was just never on my radar. I don't know. I just never really thought about it. To me, it was like if I can't make the NBA, then I'm done. I'll just be a fan. Unfortunately, my career ended as a varsity basketball player. That was it. Yeah, I don't know. I never thought about that. But I guess, I was a weirdo in that, like, I just started working out early on. And I was just always, like, passionate about fitness, passionate about nutrition. And, like, since, like, 4th, 5th grade, really.
Do you think, like, that's something that, like, where does that get instilled in you?
I think for me, it was because of my father.
Yeah. But 4th, 5th grade, you knew that he was having health issues and complications at that time?
Yeah. So like,
Gotcha.
well, yes. And, yes. So there was things going on then too. So like and my parents got divorced. So like, I always felt like I had to be the man of the house. So I always wanted to like kind of have this, like, I wanted to be strong and protect my family if necessary. So I think it started with that too.
What does that feel like, being like in 4th, 5th grade and feeling like you have additional responsibility on your shoulders? How does that impact you in middle school, high school? I'm just fascinated by this because I didn't grow up in this type of situation, but a lot of people do get raised in this type of situation. So like, what did you learn about yourself during that time?
So I learned that we're all way more powerful and stronger than we think. I've learned that you need to you could look at things two ways, right? It can either be a blessing or it could be a curse, right? And there were times where I felt like I had it unfair, but I chose to look at it for the most part as a blessing. And I realized the cards were dealt a certain way. I could either, cry about it and be upset about it, or I can make the most of it. So for me, it's like I chose to make the most of it, and that's just the way it was. I didn't see any alternative.
Have you been able to help other people in that specific type of situation?
I've had conversations throughout the years, but it hasn't been like a focus of mine.
Why not?
I don't know. I guess it just never really came up, or I never really, I don't know. It just never really came up that much, or I didn't, people didn't seek me out for that.
Do you think that is an area you could really help people in the future? Of like, if they're in a situation where their father passes away, or they're in a situation where they feel like they need to be the man of the house at a young age, do you think that's a situation or somewhere where you could provide value to people in the future?
Sure. I mean, that's something potentially. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, what advice would you have for somebody listening to this who's like in high school or in middle school and they feel that?
So this might sound cold, but I think I could say, because I lived through it.
Yeah.
And there's some people with clinical depression, all sorts of things, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't want to like discount that. I know there's gonna be people like, oh, I'm clinically, but like if you're in a really bad funk, if things are not going the way you want, I think ultimately therapy is you fighting reality.
Therapy is you fighting reality.
Right? It's just you talking with someone and you just, why did this happen? Why is he or she like this? Why is this like that? Why? You're just fighting reality, right? And reality is essentially just, what is, right? It just happened, right? My father passed away. Whereas I think the healthiest thing you can do is work to accept that reality, ideally embrace it, and even better, love the reality. And that would be my advice, is work on accepting it, because the more you fight reality, the more you're going to suffer, right? The more you wish things were a different way and hope they were, like, you're just fighting reality. And you can either love what is, or you can fight what is. And I choose to love what is, because otherwise they're going to suffer.
What do you say to people then who have been to therapy and they look at what reality is and it helps them find a new perspective?
Perfect. That's great. And if that's what therapy ultimately is, right? I think a breakthrough is you're thinking about things in a different way, right? And if therapy does that, then that's perfect, because you need to ultimately, in order to move past the mental roadblock, right? It's a mental roadblock in your head. How do we get past this? you need to think about it in a different way. And if therapy does that, then perfect. That's great. That's the idea of therapy, is to have a breakthrough, is to think about things in a different way.
Did you have a bad experience with therapy?
No, I mean, I didn't. I remember when my parents got divorced, my mom, like, she took us to a therapist. I went like once or twice. It didn't do much for me. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just, I always felt like we can either, this is what it is, or we can fight what it is. I choose to be on this side.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's interesting how people have different perspectives on it, on therapy, and how it helps people, how it doesn't, how, people are against it or for it.
Yeah, and I want to be very clear. I'm not against it at all. Yeah. I just think ultimately, like, a lot of therapy, or some of therapy, I should say, is like, it's just you're fighting reality. And I think if you can come to the terms with, like, cats meow, dogs bark, and whatever happened. And of course, there's certain things that are just awful and horrific, and you can't just accept. You need work on accepting it. But the sooner you can do that, the happier you'll be.
Last time we spoke on the phone, we mentioned therapy, or meditation rather, and you said that was one area you wanted to improve. How are you doing on your meditation journey?
It's hard, man. For me, sitting still is really, really hard.
Yeah.
I prefer active meditation. So for me, like, I find lifting weights is a meditation for me. I find concentrating on my muscles, and just feeling my body move is, for me, that works. I spent a lot of time just trying to sit still, and it didn't work, and it caused more, grief and more guilt than it wasn't doing anything.
Take me through that. What happened? What do you think was happening that it was causing you more grief?
Well, it's just like, I should be able to do this. I want to do this. And it's like, what? Maybe this isn't for me, right? I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with all these, morning routines people love to talk about, right? And it's like, wake up, hit the sun for 10 minutes, then go for a walk, it's like, you can go absolutely crazy trying to do all these things. Like, do what works. And I think, yes, there has to be some initial, like, trial period and practice. As I like to say, like, if you do something long enough, it's a practice. It feels weird. It's unnatural at first. Eventually it becomes a routine. And then if you do that routine long enough, it becomes a habit, right? And I did the practice of meditation for a while. It just, I wasn't clicking for me.
How long was the practice, and what was the routine?
A month. I'd sit still in a chair for 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's like, all right, so someone tells you, all right, I want to get better fitness and I want to be in better shape. I'm going to work out for a month. And you'd be like, what do you mean? Like, it's a lifelong practice. It's not a month.
Right.
And so it's just about if the rewards are worth it for you,
Yes, and I found that, like, I could have used those 10 minutes towards my workout.
Interesting.
And to me, for me, working out is my therapy.
Yeah.
That's my meditation.
Yeah, fair.
And it was like, I'd rather put this time to that.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with exercise or nutrition, I think the reward is very clear of, longevity, vitality, more energy, et cetera.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of things that we can't measure in this moment that are going in the future when we have tools to measure. All right, you meditate this much, your energy levels increase this much. We don't have ways to actually measure that in this moment unless you're writing down at the end of the day. All right, this was a great day, and you can track that and correlate that to the meditation. But it's we're a very metric-driven society in general, and externally driven society as well. And that leads us to not care for and appreciate some of the inner journey that goes on. And we don't have good ways to measure those yet, but we will eventually, I think.
As we call them with our clients, like non-scale victories, not everything is tangible, right?
Non-scale victories?
Right.
What does that mean?
Like,
exactly?
A scale victory would be the weight, the scale on the weight, the weight on the scale goes down.
Right.
Whereas, like, a non-scale victory, it's like, oh, actually, I was able to totally avoid this food that always has a pull on me. Or, I was able to exercise even though I didn't feel like it. Just things that are just unrelated to the scale itself. And the tricky part to what you were saying also is, like, something I've learned is that, doing the right thing and happiness doesn't always necessarily feel happy in the moment. So, like, even with exercise or meditation, for me, again, meditation didn't work for me, but, like, exercise, there are times where I don't feel like exercising. It doesn't necessarily feel happy in the moment, but afterwards I feel incredible.
Yeah. It's the difference between meaning and happiness. It's like if you're doing things that bring you meaning, sometimes in the moment you're not happy doing them. And I think often we chase happiness, but we don't chase meaning. And yeah, what's been your journey with happiness and meaning?
That's good. I mean, I call it like pleasure versus happiness. So pleasure to me are like the cookies or like watching Netflix or whatever it is. Like those are short-term things. You get a quick high, but then they fizzle very quickly, and then you wind up feeling bad afterward. Whereas happiness or meaning, even more so, is it might not necessarily feel great in the moment. Sometimes it does, but the after is incredible, right? And ultimately, I think we want to do things that make us feel good before, during, and afterward, right? So before, like sometimes if we're doing something that we know might not make us feel good, there's trepidation. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Right? You want something that makes you feel good before, during, ideally, but sometimes it doesn't. Exercise could be, torture during it, but it's also, I love self-imposed discomfort, but then afterward I feel very comfortable. And then afterward I feel incredible. So ideally you want something that makes you feel good before, during, and after. And I think that, talks to your point about meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. How many people have you coached over the last 15 years?
Thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a couple of stories that stick out to you in terms of transformations, mental, physical, and just people who have changed their lives as a result of the things that you've helped them implement. Are there any that you could share here that maybe could inspire somebody or help somebody in the beginning stages of their own journey? Yeah,
I mean, one thing I've learned, which I think is fascinating, is I can only help someone solve their problems until I find out why they like having their problems, right? You can only help someone solve their problems until you find out why they like having their problems.
Wow.
And that is like a huge kind of lead into how I help clients, because it's like, well, how is this serving you, right? How is this behavior serving you? And ultimately, every behavior, positive or negative, is serving us in some way. And when you understand how a behavior is serving them, especially a negative one, it's like, all right, well, let's talk about that, and then let's work on replacing that. But to like specific examples, I mean, there's literally thousands. I mean,
sure.
It's
like someone asking me, what's your favorite podcast episode? Like,
it's like your children.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck.
Right. I mean, I have my boys, Zachary and Asher. I will never answer that. And it's, it's impossible because you love them equally, and they each, it's different forms of love.
Yeah. No, but like, are there any, maybe in the last like 6 months that you've been like, wow, like I'm really impressed with this person, or because I want people to really understand and connect with a story that that you've been moved by in some way.
Yeah, so I mean, there was this one client, we'll call him David, and he came to us. He tried everything under the sun, nothing was working, and he was what I call a tactic chaser. He was just every month he was onto this, right? So 1 month it was vegan, 1 month it was paleo, 1 month it was IF. Like he was just nonstop, just constantly, going from one thing to the next. I'm like, what would happen if you actually just committed to one thing? And no matter what, you're gonna follow through, right? Or I shouldn't say follow through, because that's where we come in. But no matter what, you're gonna work on getting through that resistance, right? That FDR, that fear, discomfort, doubt, and resistance, and just trust us in the process. And that was very hard, because some people, I think we're all hardwired to like want that shiny object, right? That new shiny thing, that new shiny diet. So he committed to it. And, slowly but surely, he's sticking with it. We're getting through those mental barriers, those mental roadblocks. And it's incredible, because he's lost like 40 pounds already. He feels better. He has a ton of energy for his kids. Like, to me, that is the best thing ever. My favorite part of all these transformations, is the mental transformation, right? Because sure, it's nice to look great. It's nice to feel great. But to me, I love when clients say, what's next? What else can I do? Because, I like to say, like, when you realize your body's potential, you can realize your overall potential. When you conquer yourself, you feel like you can conquer the entire world.
Yeah, this podcast and doing 270 plus episodes is only a result of me first getting in shape first, because I realized I could apply the same exact principles that I used and do this podcast. And it's not going to be what it is in the beginning, and it'll slowly get better over time. And this isn't what it'll be in 5 years, but that's the beauty of it. And so I think that's the key part about fitness, especially, is like, you don't just stop at fitness. You realize this is something that I can do for the rest of my life.
It's applicable to every aspect of life. And there's, two things come to mind, like, that fitness related skills that apply to everything. Number one is the practice of starting something even when you don't feel like it, right? So this is my life's work. I'm going to do this till the day I die. There's still days where I don't feel like exercising, right? There's still days where I might not necessarily feel like eating nutritiously, but I still do it. That practice of starting when you don't feel like it, and also the practice of recovering when you don't have a great workout or a great day or a great meal, right? So self-compassion is really, really important, because I think so many of us are so hard on ourselves. It's like the moment we mess up, it's like, oh, screw it. I'm done, right? And like that practice of recovering right away, making a U-turn right away is so powerful.
Yeah, 100%. What separates the clients that you have that actually make physical and mental transformations and those that don't?
I would say simply some are just unwilling, and they admit it, they're unwilling to do the work mentally in terms of there's just a lot of things that come up, right? Food is a coping mechanism. Food helps us, de-stress. It helps us avoid our problems. It helps us, distract ourselves. So when you're getting to the root of the issue, and we're obsessed with that because we're obsessed with sustainable success, we're committed to making MyBodyTutor the last program our clients do. In order to do that, you have to change what's going on between your ears, right? You have to change that, and you have to get to those things. And sometimes clients are just like, I'm not ready for this. It happens. It doesn't happen all that often. It happens rarely, but when it does, I get it. And it's like, I can't make someone ready. I can't make someone want to do that work. But we certainly try to make it as easy as possible, as comfortable as possible. But no matter what, they have to face those things.
How do you face the parts of yourself that you don't want to face?
It's hard, but I think that's where coaching comes into play. I think that's where having support comes into play.
Yeah.
I think that's where having proven tactics to come into play. Starting small, right? And it sounds so simplistic, but it's like, let's just try this one time, right? Tonight, let's see how this feels. Not for the rest of your life, not forever. Let's just try this tonight. For example, it's like, every night I need ice cream. Like that's how I kind of wind down the day. Let's try one time. Let's see what happens. Just one time. See how it feels.
One time, less ice cream.
Yeah.
One time, no ice cream.
Exactly. Right. And that's just a very overly simplistic version, but it's just like, let's just try, and we break it down. And it's also having someone there you can lean into, right? You can talk with your issues about.
Yeah. It's really a remarkable service. What aspects or what areas of life do you think the fitness coaching that you do and the fitness accountability, where else could we use this sort of accountability in lives, in habits? How could you not expand your own operation, but what other ideas do you come across for businesses that are similar to yours that you've thought about?
So, I've had a lot of people come to me, hey, you should do this for money. Managing money, budgeting.
Interesting.
I've had a lot of people throughout the years, relationships, accountability around relationships, making time for people. It's limitless, right?
Yeah.
But it's also, it's limitless, but it's also, is there a market for it? Are people willing to pay to solve this problem? But in terms of aspects of life, facets of life, I think it's truly limitless.
Yeah. And also, like, does that problem call to you in a way that makes it your life's mission, right? Like, people can hop on a new idea or a new trend, but then it's like, does it really call to their heart? And that's what they'll find out a year into it if people aren't subscribing.
Yeah. So for me, I call it like, it's like opportunity versus mission. So like, I remember when Groupon was hot, like there was like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands Groupon clones, right?
Right.
That's an opportunity. You're chasing an opportunity. When you're chasing a mission, your success is inevitable because you're not ever going to stop, right? Your success is inevitable. I could tell, I can hear what you say. Like, you're going to keep doing this no matter what. I will keep doing this no matter what. This is my life's work. This is a mission for me. If you're chasing an opportunity, then eventually you're going to be on to the next opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and it is true. But I just want to help people get to that place themselves. Are there any stories of friends of yours who have, or yourself, who have found their mission unexpectedly, and how have they gone about finding their mission unexpectedly? Does anything come to mind for you?
Trying to think.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because I think I want this podcast to be a place where people could be like, I never thought I'd find my mission in that place, or them to look at themselves in a way. I know for me, meditation was a key part in me finding my mission. That's why I speak about it so excitedly, and journaling too. And so I want more people to do that, because the better you get to know yourself, the better you can get to know your potential mission.
Totally. Well, it's interesting. I'm trying to think, it's like, I feel like with my friends that are entrepreneurs or started their own thing, or it's like so ingrained who they are, I don't even remember like their light bulb moment. But I will say this about passion. I think a lot of people think passion just comes to you. It's like a lightning bolt. I think ultimately people are passionate at things they're good at, which is a big distinction. And it also could be like, hey, what do I want to get good at? Because if you're really good at something, you're likely going to be passionate about it. Although that's not always the case.
Were you good at accounting?
No, but I also, I mean, I guess I was okay. I mean, I got a job at the Big Four accounting firm. Like just today, I spoke with a lawyer who is a partner at one of the best law firms in the world. Clearly they're very good at what they do, but they're not passionate.
Yeah.
So it's tricky, but I do think you have to be good at it to be passionate. I'm trying to think though, how can we help people find that? I mean, again, I think it's what means a lot to you. If money were no issue, I think that's big. What would you do? Because I think a lot of people chase money, chase an opportunity, and I think that that doesn't last, in my opinion. So I think it's what would you do if money were no object? If someone gave you, all the money in the world, what would you choose to work on? Yeah. And if someone says nothing, I want to sit on the beach, and they're not the type of person I think that likely will have a mission.
Or maybe something about the beach is calling to them.
Perhaps.
No, but one thing that I always ask people is like, what would you do if you had a year to live? And that's not necessarily what you should actually do, but it sometimes gets people in the right frame of mind of thinking, oh, like I would quit this or do this. And it can be a helpful way to push someone to do what's actually calling to them.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, if I had a year to live, I spend a ton of time with my kids, Zachary and Asher. So, I mean, I guess I would certainly spend as much time with them as possible, but I would still do MBT because it's so important to me. I know, actually, something that just came to mind is like, do you have a book in you, right? Like there's something in you that you need to get out. Maybe that's your mission. And again, I think that could be helpful. But to your question is also like, how do we get that out of someone? But I don't know, if you had to write a book, what would the book be about?
Yeah. For you, what is
for me, it would be about health and fitness. But for me, my book, and eventually I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
It's going to be way more about the mindset, psychology, and habits of weight loss. There's been 1 billion diets out there. 10% of all best-selling diet books, or I should say 10% of all best-selling books are diet books. Yet it's the same people who keep buying the books year after year, right? They're not changing behavior. They're not changing relationships with food, et cetera. So my book will be about, how do you actually change your mental and psychology and habits? Because that's what's going to lead to sustainable success.
I know you've been probably writing this book for the last 15 years in your head. Have you actually put pen to paper?
Not yet. I sincerely believe at this point, people don't need another book. I really believe in coaching and what we offer. So at this point, I have not. But eventually we'll get there.
Remember, you also thought the same thing about social media. And so maybe another book is needed and in store. But I like to end these podcasts with a challenge for people. And we spoke about so much of fitness, mission, purpose, your own journey into that. But I'd love to know, what's a challenge you can leave people with to become the best version of themselves?
So one of my mantras is discomfort is your compass. And what I mean by that is if you do what you've always done, it's going to feel natural. It's going to feel comfortable, right? It's just going to feel like everyday life. If you do something differently, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And that's the idea, right? Because if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to keep getting the same results you've always gotten. So you want to let discomfort be your compass. Because again, if you're doing something differently, you're going to get to close to where you want to be. So my challenge to you would be, let discomfort be your compass, right? So it could be as simple as taking the stairs instead of the elevator. It could be going one extra rep. It could be talking to someone that you might not normally talk to. It could be sending an email that you might not feel comfortable doing. Those are examples of discomfort. So my challenge is find an area of discomfort and go for it. Seek it.
What was the last time in your life that you used discomfort as your compass?
I use discomfort every single day. So for me, I love self-imposed discomfort. This morning I worked out. Like, I love just torturing myself. It's just very, self-imposed discomfort brings me a lot of comfort. So I love that because I find that when I put myself through discomfort, it enables me to deal with the inevitable ups and downs in life.
Yeah, but Adam, like you've been lifting weights since you were probably in 5th grade or something crazy like that. So is that really discomfort, like for you to like go through a training session?
It is, because like there are times where I'm a little nervous before a training session.
Really?
I work out by myself. I blast music.
What are you nervous about?
Because I know how uncomfortable it's going to be. I know I know how painful it's going to be.
Interesting.
I mean, obviously there's a part of me that likes it, or otherwise I wouldn't do it. But like, there is definitely a part of me that like if I have a tough day, like there's a part of me that's like, oh. And one of the things I've learned is we spend more energy resisting a task than if we were to just do it. So it's like there are times, you know, especially back in the day, to be like, oh, I have to work out. And I wind up talking about working out for hours. It's like, just do it. Yeah. Obviously easier said than done, but it's just do it. So yeah.
I love it. Well, Adam, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you. Where can we send people to connect with you further?
Yeah, so you can go to mybodytutor.com. That's our website. You can find us on all the socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.
All the platforms.
All the platforms. Yeah, so, you know, I'm always available. I pride myself in being, you know, available. So if you ever have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out. Yeah, and I wanted to thank you. You know, I've been fortunate to be on a bunch of podcasts. I was looking forward to this for a long time. You're very thoughtful. I could tell you do your research. I think there's a lot of podcast hosts that kind of like their MO is like, well, I don't do any research because I just want to let the conversation, you know, happen naturally. And it's like, yes, but you could tell they're just not doing any work. And there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to get to where you want to be. I actually brought you a little gift. I wanted you to.
Should I open it now?
Yeah, sure. I think your people might appreciate it.
Oh, baby.
Actually, turn it the other way.
Okay. What do we got here? This might be the second gift on camera. Oh, wow. This is awesome. You never know how close you are. Never give up on your dreams. This is beautiful. Wow.
And then on the back, I wrote, if you can read that.
Wow. Danny, don't ever be that guy. The sky's the limit. See you at the top. Adam Gilbert. What a way to end this podcast. I'm so grateful for you.
Yeah, man. My biggest fear is being that guy on the bottom. And when I say don't be that guy, that's the guy.
I got you. Understood loud and clear. Thank you so much, man. You mean the world to me. Thank you.